The name of the show is called Pro Union. The name of the show is called Pro Union. Now, is Anton Pro Union? I understand why the union came into existence in the first place. I also understand that the need to be able to negotiate or bargain collectively. My experience with the union was one of a negative experience, and that's when I was in the union, Local 600. But also on top of that, I also understand how unions have killed American jobs and accelerated the exodus of American jobs here in the United States of America. Now, unions have largely been unable to organize in southern states. They have always in southern states resisted unions and the right to work and their ability to be able to make a decent living and low cost of living and all of this stuff, right? But Shawn Fain, and I said it, changed everything. Changed everything. Because he was able to market to the unions successfully to place automakers in a very, very tough bargaining position in order to pass historic gains when it comes to the amount of money that union makers are making or people that are a part of the union that are making. Now, I'm no hater, so I believe y'all should be able to get y'all bag when y'all should get y'all bag. And that's why I'm kind of conflicted. Because what the union represents and you paying your dues versus what's happening to the American economy is almost two different conversations, but they intersect. They intersect. Let me give you an example. Volkswagen recently unionized. Mercedes, they say, is up next. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications.
Tonight, the United Auto Workers Union has its...
And let me say this also before we get into this conversation. My mods, y'all know I love y'all. I love my moderators in the chat. Y'all got to give more grace. Y'all have to give more grace. We don't want to live in an echo chamber. And as long as nobody is getting crazy disrespectful, let people rock. Let people have their opinions. If they have a difference of opinion, if they say something weird, if they use different language. Somebody said good morning the other day and it started going back and forth. I don't want that here. I don't want this to be a place where we only have people that agree with us or people that do things a certain way. We have to give grace. Let the people in the chat lives matters. Let them get their thoughts off. Do not let people say and have a difference of opinion. That's what then informs us and allows for us to be able to take into consideration opinions that may be different than ours. All right, let's rock out.
Eyes on the South after a major victory at a Volkswagen assembly plant in Chattanooga, where workers voted to unionize. On Friday, the UAW won in a stunning 73% vote after losing elections here in 2014 and 2019. It's the union's first win in a Southern assembly plant owned by a foreign automaker.
We hugged each other, we cried, I got on my knees. I thank the Lord.
In 3 weeks, UAW is taking their fight to Alabama, where workers at 2 Mercedes-Benz plants in Tuscaloosa will vote to unionize.
When we started this campaign, we kind of that little bit of a pride, we wanted to be the first. We're now a shining example to these other plants.
Experts say this win could be a watershed moment in the labor movement, which has already picked up momentum in the last year in industries like healthcare and Hollywood.
UAW won major contracts in Michigan last year with the country's big 3 automakers. President Biden, who stood alongside auto workers in Michigan during their strike, congratulated the workers in Tennessee and criticized 6 Republican governors, including Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, who tried to convince workers not to unionize.
I think it was a mistake, but that's their choice.
In a statement, Volkswagen thanked its workers for participating in the election and said they're waiting for the results to be certified. That could come in a matter of days as UAW rallies across the South. Priya Sridhar, NBC News, Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Let me give it to you from a different perspective before I give y'all my opinion.
Workers at a Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee, voted overwhelmingly to join the United Auto Workers Union, marking a major breakthrough for the labor movement in America. On Friday, some 73% of workers at the Tennessee plant voted in favor of joining the UAW. This is the first time that a foreign car maker's plant in the South has voted to unionize. Now, this is a huge deal because the American South has been skeptical and even hostile toward labor unions for decades. Republican leaders and the business community in the South have warned for years that unionizing would mean a loss of jobs. And this Chattanooga Volkswagen plant had previously voted against joining the UAW twice, in 2014 and again in 2019. All of this comes about 5 months after UAW workers ratified historic new contracts with record wage gains and improved benefits at the big three automakers in Detroit. With this win out of Tennessee, the UAW will expand its focus to other southern plants, hoping to organize at least half a dozen more over the next 2 years. Another vote will take place next month at a Mercedes-Benz plant in Alabama. Joining me now to talk about the power of American labor movement is Sarah Nelson, international president.
Now, before we hear what she has to say, let me also give y'all some insight on what the sentiment is about that Mercedes plant over there in Alabama. Check it out.
Governor Ivey sharing her concerns over United Auto Workers. She joined other governors in issuing a statement yesterday.
It comes as some workers at the Mercedes-Benz plant in Vance move forward with efforts to unionize. WVTM 13's Aaron Llewellyn explains how they feel about the governor's joint statement.
Mercedes-Benz employees in Vance still fighting for workplace rights.
When your employer won't listen to you as a worker, the only choice you have is to unionize, to have your voice heard.
Benz employee Jeremy Kimbrell says he and his co-workers decided to unionize after a worker who was battling cancer was fired for using his phone on the job. Employees also claimed they stopped getting raises and their pay scale changed, forcing them to work long hours for little pay.
We have tried to use the open lines of communication that they talk about, and they wouldn't listen. They've got a long history of not listening.
On Tuesday, Governor Kay Ivey released a joint statement with 5 other governors in southern states, saying in part, "We have worked tirelessly on behalf of our constituents to bring good-paying jobs to our states."
Maybe in the beginning, it made sense that they paid their workers less and the benefits weren't as good. There's no reason for a worker in the South to make less than a worker doing the same job in the Midwest.
I'm going to read that super chat shortly. I appreciate you guys.
Or anywhere.
The statement goes on to say, "The experience in our states is when employees have a direct relationship with their employers that makes for a more positive working environment. They can advocate for themselves and what is important to them without outside influence."
A hot topic in the news right now is a free and fair election. So workers deserve the right to make up their own minds on whether they want a union or not inside their workplace. And it would be good if all the governors and the politicians would respect the workers to make up their own minds, and then they can have a free and fair election.
So let me go back into this conversation, and then I'll give my thoughts on this whole situation. I just want to keep you guys informed and update you on everything that's happening from when we covered the whole unionization, well, not the unionization, but the workplace fight with the UAW, with the big three, with Stellantis. I'm so used to saying Chrysler here in Detroit. Stellantis, General Motors, and Ford Motor Company, and then them trying to organize over at other organizations, including Mercedes, and obviously winning their contract over at Volkswagen. This is what the sentiment is from a flight attendant union that is now trying to be a part of the UAW. This is a person that's basically trying to work with the UAW or is the head of what they're trying to organize as far as the flight attendants, because they've seen them win historic contracts in the Detroit Big Three. Check it out.
For the Association of Flight Attendants. And while you're not an auto worker, Sarah, there are similarities between the auto workers and the auto workers union in the north and the sort of things that have gone on with flight attendants and airline workers. There's a lot of history here, and this feels really monumental to me.
This is monumental, Allie. This is an extraordinary win, but it is coming off the backs of the strike. and showing the American worker that we can fight and we can change the conditions in this country. Every single person across the country is working 2 and 3 jobs to survive. Forced overtime, our time and our money has been taken from us. And so this is not just a fight in the South, although the South is really where we've got to win big, because this is where workers have been exploited the most, oftentimes to attract companies from outside the country and to bring those companies in on the backs of the workers who have subsidized those companies with low wages and a lot more time on the job.
Sarah, talk to me about the threats. During the strike, the thing that came out was always, you're going to lose your jobs. In fact, some of the automakers started shutting down plants and laying off workers. That's always the threat. Prices will go up, you'll lose jobs, bad for everyone. It has worked in the past as a fear-mongering tactic. What's changed in the last year or two?
What's changed is that workers see that that tactic is a tactic to continue to make us desperate for this work, to make us feel lucky that we should have a job, rather than helping these companies understand that they should feel lucky to have our work. And so workers are saying it has gone backwards for so long, and the only place that we're seeing a difference is in corporate greed. This is all of our work, all of our time has been pushed to Wall Street. It has been pushed to billionaires. And if we don't take a stand, it's never going to change. So those threats of closing those plants is a near-term threat. But what UAW was able to do was to lock in long-term job security and even job security as the EV industry continues to grow.
And we saw threats or we saw strikes or threats of strikes.
The EV industry is starting to retract. I'll get there in a minute.
In the last year, and in many cases, remarkable successes that came out of them, from the Teamsters, from the United Auto Workers, from SAG-AFTRA. In your industry, there were several of those close calls in some cases. What's the issue with the South, and why is there movement in the South that we've not seen?
Look, I think we're seeing movement in the South because people are just really hurting. And they're fed up. The pandemic showed us that not only have we been treated as a cost line item with all of these companies, but actually that we were treated as disposable. You had people in meat packing plants being forced to go in there, and you had executives laughing about who was going to be the first worker to die from COVID. So we have seen very clearly that we're in this together across industries. Flight attendants are fighting right now for record-breaking contracts, and just like the auto workers were. And we need a giant step forward because we're also facing legacy sexism that has kept the value of our.
You see how this opens a can of worms? Let me play it for you one more time. Let me rewind it for 5 seconds. Check it out.
Forward because we're also facing legacy sexism that has kept the value of our jobs lower than it should be.
They're using the union now in order to advocate against legacy sexism. So now they're saying that women need to be promoted in the same way that they leveraged y'all in order to get certain things to happen when it came to feminism is the same thing that they're using in order to have the union advocate on behalf of women, not just for workers, but for women. The union has now become a political organization. And now they're using it to say that we have legacy sexism in the workplace. Oh my God. Let me tell you something, bro. And I want to break down exactly what this is. And I'm going to do it really, really quickly because I want to go over into the next conversation. And I got a timeline to keep because I got a flight to go and catch. One of the reasons why automakers opened up plants in the United States of America in the first place is because it allowed for them to be able to open up the plant in a conducive environment for both the company and the workers, right? And so when they opened up these plants in these environments, especially in the Alabamas and stuff like that, it was dire. Wasn't no jobs. It wasn't no jobs. The industries down in the South wasn't as progressive as the industries in the North. And so now they've established these plants in these locations, and at a time where workers were saying, oh man, we just happy to have a job, we doing better than we ever had before, they've gotten complacent. And then they was paying attention because we all have social media now to what was happening up in the north with the big three. Now, what they didn't know was that the big three was laying off workers, most of the temporary workers, especially over at Stellantis, they all got laid off. I'm gonna go into a completely different segment where I'm telling y'all where the layoffs is happening over at Stellantis some more. With white collar workers, because they're trying to contain costs in order to continue to promote manufacturing, because they still got to get these cars out. Hopefully, even though consumers are buying less cars, considering that the cost of cars is continue to explode because they have to pass that cost over to the consumers and the legacy costs that come along with manufacturing, especially when it came to the workers. And so what happened was the South had created a more conducive environment for automakers to be able to open plants down there. And so they did so, and they did so under the guise that they wouldn't be able to be controlled by the unions. Now, whichever side of the fence that you stand on, that ain't got nothing to do with me, right? If they want to unionize, as long as it's legal within the United States of America, they're more welcome to do so. But what I'm telling you is that all of this is going to do is accelerate the expansion of robotics, the need or the lack of, or to remove the worker itself. And they're going to have less people doing way more jobs, and they're going to accelerate investment in that. That's what I see personally. I see automakers either pulling out or just spending more time and money towards investing in automation, robotics, and things like that so that they need less workers. And then they can bust the union up because union membership is dwindling. It's not growing with jobs themselves. Now the union is dependent on organization in order to continue to grow the ranks of the union. So that's just my thoughts of it in a particular, in a general sense.